A 26-year-old woman walks into a cafe carrying the weight of 2 years' worth of judgment, a diaper bag packed with military precision, and a secret that could destroy the only chance at love she's had in years. Across the room, a widowed father of one sits waiting, his coffee growing cold, his heart braced for disappointment. What happens in the next 60 seconds will either confirm every cruel assumption she's learned to expect, or it will shatter everything she thought she knew about being seen. Before we continue, please tell us, where in the world are you tuning in from? We love seeing how far our stories travel. The door of the wandering mug opened with a soft chime that felt deafening in Amira Collins' ears. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she scanned the small cafe, her grip tightening on Kira's warm body pressed against her hip. There, by the window, a man with dark hair and tired eyes that reminded her of her own reflection. He was already looking at her, his expression shifting from polite anticipation to visible confusion as his gaze dropped to the toddler on her hip. Here we go, Amira thought, forcing her feet to move forward. Let the judgment begin. She had dressed carefully that morning, a red dress that she'd ironed twice, her blonde hair pulled back in what she hoped looked intentional rather than hastily assembled. Kira had fought her through diaper changes and shoe negotiations, and now clung to her mother's neck with the possessive grip of a koala. Abram Gray stood as she approached, nearly knocking his knee against the table. His coffee sloshed dangerously close to the rim of his cup.
Abram? Amira's voice came out steadier than she felt. Sienna? He caught himself. Wait, no, Amira, sorry, yes, hi, hello. The man was nervous. That was unexpected. Kira lifted her head from Amira's shoulder, fixing Abram with the kind of frank, unblinking stare that only toddlers and particularly judgmental house cats could achieve. One chubby finger found its way into her mouth as she studied him with the intensity of a scientist examining a particularly interesting specimen. Amira took a breath. This was the moment where he would make an excuse about forgetting something in his car, or suddenly remember an urgent work emergency, or simply stand up and walk away like the man 3 months ago who had looked at Kira and said, "I'm not looking to raise someone else's mistake." The memory of that night, crying in her car for an hour, Kira sleeping peacefully in her car seat, blissfully unaware that she'd just been called a mistake, strengthened Amira's resolve. "This is Kira," she said, the words coming out in a rush. "My daughter. I know I probably should have mentioned her before, but I wanted you to see the full picture before you decided if you wanted to run. Most people do. Run, I mean. And I completely understand if you want to. I'm tired of pretending to be something I'm not. I'm a package deal. This is the package. If that's not what you're looking for, I won't be offended." She paused, slightly breathless. "Well, I might be a little offended, but I'll get over it." The silence that felt like standing on the edge of a cliff. Amira watched Abram's face, trying to read the micro-expressions that flickered across it. Surprise, confusion, something that might have been recognition? "Would you like to sit down?" he asked finally, gesturing to the chair across from him. Amira blinked. "What?" "Sit down, unless you'd prefer to stand, but the chairs here are actually pretty comfortable, or so I've heard. I've only been sitting in mine for about 15 minutes, but so far no complaints." A small, uncertain smile tugged at Amira's lips. You're not going to leave?" "Why would I leave?" "Because I brought a toddler to a blind date. Most people consider that a deal breaker." Abram shrugged, and there was something in his eyes, a weariness that matched her own. "I have a 5-year-old at home. If anything, this just means you understand that babysitters are expensive and unreliable." Amira sat down slowly, her legs suddenly unsteady. She adjusted Kira on her lap, and the little girl immediately began a tactile investigation of the table's surface, her small hands patting the wood with scientific curiosity. "You have a daughter?" Amira managed. "Marley. She's home with my mom right now, probably convincing her that ice cream counts as a vegetable because it has vanilla beans in it." For the first time since walking through that door, Amira laughed. A real laugh, startled out of her like a bird started from a tree. "Mama," Kira announced, tugging at Amira's sleeve with the imperious authority of a tiny dictator. "Hungry." "I know, baby. Give me just a—" "What does she like?" Abram interrupted, already flagging down a server.
a teenage girl with blue-streaked hair and an eyebrow piercing. "They have these little fruit cups here and some kind of cheese crackers that Marley always demands when we come." Amira stared at him as if he had just offered to solve world hunger. Her mouth opened, then closed. She likes cheese and bananas." "Perfect." Abram smiled at the server, and Amira noticed the way it transformed his face, softening the tired lines around his eyes. "Could we get a fruit cup, some cheese crackers, and—" He glanced at Amira. "What would you like?" A latte, please?" When the server left, silence settled between them, not uncomfortable exactly, but weighted with the strangeness of the situation. Amira watched Abram watching Kira, who had discovered a fascinating spot on the table and was now tapping it rhythmically with one finger. Tap, tap, tap. Kira narrated her actions with the seriousness of a documentary filmmaker. "That's a very good tap," Abram told her solemnly. Kira beamed at him, revealing 4 tiny teeth. When the food arrived, Kira's eyes widened with the kind of pure joy that only small children experiencing the appearance of snacks could achieve. She reached for the fruit cup with both hands, her coordination still imperfect at 2 years old. Pieces of banana and strawberry threatened to become casualties of her enthusiasm.
"Here, let me—" Amira started, but Abram was already moving. "May I?" he asked, and the question was so gentle, so respectful that Amira could only nod. She watched, frozen, as Abram Gray, a man she had known for approximately 12 minutes, reached across the table and gently lifted Kira on her lap. He settled the toddler against his chest with the practiced ease of someone who had done this thousands of times, one arm supporting her back while his free hand held the fruit cup steady. Kira didn't protest. She simply settled against him as if she'd known him forever, her small body relaxing into his hold. "Nana," Kira said approvingly, around a mouthful of banana that Abram had just guided to her eager mouth. "Good, Nana?" Abram asked her seriously, as if her opinion on the banana quality was of utmost importance. "Good, Nana. More." "What's the magic word?" Kira considered this with the gravity of a philosopher contemplating the meaning of existence. Her face scrunched up in concentration. "Peas?" "Close enough." Amira had gone completely still across the table, her latte arriving and sitting untouched as she watched the scene unfold. Something was happening in her chest, a cracking sensation, like ice breaking up after a long winter. When Abram looked up and caught her staring, he must have seen something in her face, because his expression shifted to concern. "Is this okay? I didn't mean to just—" "No one's ever—" Amira's voice broke. She pressed her fingers to her eyes, trying to stop the tears that were threatening to fall. I'm sorry. It's just, no one's ever done that before." "Done what?" "Treated her like—" She gestured helplessly at the scene before her, this stranger feeding her daughter fruit with the patience of a saint, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Like she's just a person, not a problem to be solved or a red flag to run from, just a person who likes bananas. "More Nana," Kira demanded, oblivious to the emotional moment happening around her. "See?" Abram said softly, offering Kira another piece of fruit. "She knows what she wants. That's admirable, honestly. Half the adults I know don't have that kind of clarity." Amira laughed again, the sound wet with tears she was still trying to suppress. She finally picked up her latte, wrapping both hands around it as if it could anchor her to this moment, this impossible, unexpected moment where someone was being kind to her daughter without expecting anything in return. "You're very strange, Abram Gray," she said. "I've been told. Usually less kindly." Amira had spent 2 years building walls around herself and Kira, expecting rejection so she could brace for it. But here was a man who had just accepted them, both of them, without hesitation. It was terrifying. They talked, and the conversation flowed with an ease that surprised them both. Abram told her about Marley, how she had her mother's brown curls and a stubborn streak that could move mountains. "She asked me the other day why the moon follows our car," he said, a smile playing at his lips. "And when I tried to explain about the moon staying in one place while we move, she said, 'Daddy, that's silly. The moon clearly likes our car.'"
Amira laughed. How do you argue with that logic? You don't. I've learned that 5-year-olds are basically tiny lawyers. They'll find loopholes in everything. As they talked, Amira found herself studying Abram's face, the lines around his eyes that spoke of both laughter and grief, the way his expression softened when he talked about his daughter, the gentleness in his hands as he kept Kira entertained with small pieces of fruit. "Can I ask?" Amira hesitated, then pushed forward. "Marley's mother?" Abram's expression shifted, and Amira immediately regretted asking. But he didn't shut down. Instead, he looked out the window at the mountains visible in the distance, his hand still absently rubbing Kira's back. "Samara," he said quietly. "She died 3 years ago. Heart condition no one knew about. She was laughing at something Marley said. Marley was trying to say spaghetti, and it kept coming out as pasketti, and then she just collapsed. By the time the ambulance got there, she was gone." "Amira, I'm so—" "You don't have to say sorry." Gently, he interrupted. "Everyone says sorry, and I appreciate it, but mostly I miss her. Every day. And I'm terrified I'm going to mess up Marley because I'm doing this alone." The honesty in his words struck Amira like a physical blow. She understood that fear, the bone-deep terror of failing the small person who depended on you completely. "I'm sure you're doing great," she said, meaning it. "Some days I'm not sure about anything." He shifted Kira slightly as she started to drowse against his shoulder, her small fist clutching a handful of his shirt. "I tried to date. Twice. It went about as well as you'd expect. One woman left mid-dinner and never came back. The other spent the entire evening talking about cryptocurrency and didn't ask about Marley once." "People are the worst," Amira said with feeling. "Not all people," Abram looked at her meaningfully. "Some people walk into cafes with toddlers on their hips and give strangers a second chance." Amira felt heat rise to her cheeks. She busied herself with her latte, which had grown lukewarm. "My turn for an invasive question," Abram said. "Kira's father—" And there it was, the question she had been dreading and expecting in equal measure. Amira's hands tightened around her cup. "Not in the picture," she said, which was technically true if you stretched the definition of truth until it screamed. "It's just been the two of us since she was born." Another truth that was also a lie. The cognitive dissonance of it made her stomach hurt. Abram nodded, accepting this without pushing for more details. "That must be hard." "Some days more than others." Amira looked down at Kira, who had fallen asleep against Abram's shoulder, her tiny chest rising and falling with each peaceful breath. "But she's worth it. Every sleepless night, every judgmental look in the grocery store, every date that ends with someone calling her a mistake. She's worth all of it." "Anyone who calls her a mistake is an idiot." The fierceness in Abram's voice surprised her. He was looking at Kira with something like protectiveness, and they'd only just met. It made Amira's throat tight. "Thank you," she whispered. They stayed at the cafe for 2 hours. The conversation wandered through safer topics: favorite books, him anything by Cormac McCarthy, her Jane Austen, apologetically, childhood memories, him catching fireflies in his grandmother's backyard, her building elaborate blanket forts with her sister, and the unique challenges of single parenthood. "Nobody tells you about the laundry," Abrams said with mock seriousness. "How does one small human generate so much laundry? I swear Marley goes through 3 outfit changes a day just for the drama of it." Kira has started having opinions about her socks. Apparently, some socks are too scratchy and must be removed immediately with prejudice. The sock rebellion, a classic. By the time they left the cafe, the sun was beginning to set over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that looked almost artificial in their beauty. Abram carefully transferred the sleeping Kira back into Amira's arms, and the toddler stirred slightly, mumbling something that sounded like Nana before settling against her mother's shoulder. "I had a really good time," Amira said, surprised by how much she meant it. For the first time in 2 years, a date hadn't felt like a gauntlet to survive. It had felt like possibility. "Me too." Abram's hands were in his pockets, and he looked almost shy. "Can I see you again? Both of you?" Amira hesitated. There was still so much he didn't know. things she had buried so deep she sometimes forgot they existed, secrets that felt like stones in her chest, getting heavier with each day that passed. But for the first time in 2 years, she felt something that might have been hope. "Yes," she said, "I'd like that." The second date was at a park. Amira arrived with Kira in a stroller, the heavy-duty kind designed to handle Asheville's hilly terrain, and found Abram already there, pushing Marley on a swing with the kind of practiced rhythm that spoke of thousands of afternoons just like this one. Marley saw them first. She launched herself off the swing mid-arc with the fearlessness of a tiny superhero, landing in a crouch that would have made her father's heart stop if he hadn't been so used to her acrobatics. "Daddy, they're here! The lady from the picture is here!" Marley was already running toward them, her dark curls bouncing with each step. "Marley, what did we talk about?" Abram called, jogging after her. "We don't run at strangers." "She's not a stranger, Daddy. She's Amira, and that's—" Marley skidded to a stop in front of the stroller, her eyes going wide. "That's a baby." "Not a baby," Kira corrected, from her stroller throne, with all the dignity of a 2-year-old who had recently mastered the distinction. "Big girl." "You're a big girl?" Marley crouched down to Kira's eye level, her face serious. "How old are you?" Kira held up 2 fingers, then reconsidered and held up 3, then seemed to lose track of what she was doing and just waved both hands enthusiastically. Marley giggled. "I'm 5. That means I'm the biggest. I'm going to be your best friend, okay?" "Okay," Kira agreed, as if friendships were always this simple. And perhaps, at that age, they were. Amira watched Abram watching his daughter and saw the mixture of pride and terror on his face, the universal expression of parents everywhere, witnessing their children navigate the complex world of social interaction. "Sorry," Abram said, coming to stand beside Amira. "She's been talking about this all morning. I showed her your profile picture so she'd recognize you, and she's decided you're both her people now. There's no reasoning with her once she's made a decree." "I like her," Amira said, and meant it. The third date was the one that changed everything. Abram invited them to his house, a modest 2-story in a quiet neighborhood with a backyard that had clearly been designed with a child in mind. There was a swing set, a sandbox, and what appeared to be the remnants of an ambitious garden that had been overtaken by weeds. "I keep meaning to deal with that," Abram said sheepishly, gesturing at the garden. "But between work and Marley and just life, it keeps getting pushed to the bottom of the list." "I think it has character," Amira said diplomatically. Marley had taken Kira by the hand the moment they arrived, leading her on a grand tour of the backyard with the authority of a tiny real estate agent. "And this is where we bury treasure," Marley explained seriously, pointing to a patch of disturbed earth near the fence. "But we can't dig it up until summer because Daddy said so." "Summer," Kira repeated solemnly, as if filing away this crucial information. Inside, Abram's house was lived in and loved. There were pictures on every surface. Marley as a baby, Marley missing her front teeth, Marley covered in what appeared to be finger paint. And in several frames, a beautiful woman with brown hair and a smile that could light up rooms. Samara. "That's my mama," Marley announced, noticing Amira's gaze. She had appeared at Amira's elbow with the stealth from a tiny ninja. "She's in heaven now, but Daddy says she's still watching over us." "Your mama was very beautiful," Amira said gently. "I know," Marley said it with the simple confidence of a child who had never doubted her own worth. "Daddy says I have her smile. Do you see it?" Marley demonstrated her best smile, huge and gap-toothed and absolutely radiant. "I definitely see it," Amira confirmed. "Your hair is really pretty," Marley said, switching topics with the conversational agility unique to 5-year-olds. "It's like a princess. Can I touch it?" "Sure, sweetie." Marley reached out with surprisingly gentle fingers, running them through Amira's blonde hair. "So soft. Kira, come feel. It's like a kitty." Kira toddled over with the determined gait of someone who had only recently mastered walking and was still extremely proud of this skill. She reached up, and Amira bent down so the little girl could pat her hair with both hands. "Pretty," Kira declared. "You're pretty too," Marley told her, seriously. "The prettiest big girl, the prettiest big girl ever." Watching from the kitchen doorway, Abram felt something shift in his chest. a door opening that he had thought was permanently closed. His daughter, who had spent 3 years learning to live with loss, was laughing with 2 people they had known for less than a month. And Amira, who had walked into that cafe carrying visible walls around herself, was smiling at Marley with something that looked like affection. "She adores you," Abram said when Amira joined him in the kitchen. The girls had taken their tea party outside, and through the window they could see Marley carefully explaining the proper etiquette of serving invisible tea. "She's wonderful," Amira said. "You should be very proud." "I am, though I can't take all the credit. She came that way, just fearlessly kind, even when the world gave her every reason not to be." Amira was quiet for a moment, watching the girls through the window. "How do you do it? Talk to her about her mother." Abram leaned against the counter, considering the question. "Honestly, I'd tell her the truth, that her mama loved her more than anything in the world, that love doesn't end just because someone dies, that it's okay to be sad and okay to be happy, and neither one means you're forgetting." He paused. "She asks if I'm lonely sometimes, and I tell her the truth about that too, that I am, but that I have her, and that helps." "You're a good father," Amira said quietly. "I'm trying to be. That's all any of us can do, right? Try our best and hope it's enough." The words settled between them, heavy with meaning neither of them was quite ready to examine too closely. The weeks turned into months, and what had started as careful, tentative dates evolved into something that felt like family. Amira found herself at Abram's house 3 or 4 times a week. Sometimes they'd cook dinner together while the girls played. Well, while Marley orchestrated elaborate games and Kira enthusiastically destroyed whatever Marley had just built. Other times they'd sit on the back porch after bedtime, talking about everything and nothing while the night sounds of Asheville hummed around them. "Marley asked me today if you were going to be her new mama," Abram said one evening, his voice careful. Amira's heart stuttered. "What did you tell her?" "I told her that I cared about you very much and that these things take time, that we're figuring it out as we go." He turned to look at her, and in the dim porch light his eyes were serious. "But between you and me, I'm falling in love with you, Amira Collins, both of you, and that terrifies me, because I've lost people I loved before, and I don't know if I'm brave enough to risk that kind of pain again." "Abram, you don't have to say anything," he interrupted gently. "I just needed you to know where I stand, where my heart is." But Amira did have something to say, words that had been building in her chest for weeks, pressing against her ribs like birds trying to escape. "I'm falling in love with you too," she whispered, "and it terrifies me even more because there are things you don't know, things about me and Kira that—" A cry from inside interrupted her. Kira's distinctive wail, followed by Marley's voice trying to soothe. "It's okay, Kira. The monster under the bed isn't real. I checked." They both rushed inside to find Kira sitting up in the guest bed where she'd been napping, tears streaming down her face, while Marley patted her arm with the awkward comfort of a 5-year-old who had appointed herself as guardian. "Bad dream," Marley explained. "I have them sometimes too, about the dark." Amira scooped Kira up, holding her close. "You're okay, baby. Mama's here." "Mama," Kira hiccuped into her shoulder. "Scared." "I know, sweet girl, but you're safe. You're always safe with Mama." Marley climbed onto the bed, sitting cross-legged with the posture of someone preparing to deliver important information. "When I have bad dreams, Daddy sings me the moon song. Do you want to hear it, Kira?" Kira nodded, still sniffling. And so Marley sang, in a high, slightly off-key voice that was nonetheless beautiful. "You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy." Abram joined in, his deeper voice harmonizing with his daughter's. By the second verse, even Kira was humming along, her tears drying on her cheeks. Watching them, this man and his daughter, including her child in their ritual, making space for her in their grief, in their healing, Amira felt her walls finally, completely crumble. She was in love, deeply, terrifyingly in love, and she had no idea how to tell Abram the truth. The girls' bond deepened with each passing day. Marley appointed herself as Kira's protector and teacher, a role she took with the utmost seriousness. "Okay, Kira, repeat after me. May I please have a snack?" Marley would coach patiently. "Knack,"
Kira would respond enthusiastically. Close enough. Daddy, Kira wants a snack. Kira began crying inconsolably whenever it was time to leave Marley's house. Marley home? She would ask every morning, her small face hopeful. See Marley? We'll see Marley soon, Amira would promise, and Kira's face would light up like sunrise breaking over mountains. One afternoon, Amira arrived at Abram's house to find him kneeling in the hallway, carefully applying a Band-Aid to Marley's knee while the 5-year-old explained in dramatic detail how she had sustained her injury. And then I jumped from the swing, which you said I shouldn't do, but Daddy, I had to because I'm training to be a superhero. And I landed wrong, but I didn't cry. Well, maybe a little, but only because it surprised me. Very brave, Abram said solemnly, pressing a kiss to the Band-Aid. Is Kira here yet? Marley asked, craning her neck to look past her father. Oh, Kira, I have an injury, a very serious injury. Come see. Kira toddled over with her hands outstretched, her face creased with concern that was heartbreakingly genuine. Marley hurt? Just a little, but your mama's here, so everything's better now. The casual way Marley said, your mama, as if Amira belonged to both children now, made something squeeze tight in Amira's chest. Later that evening, after the girls had been bathed and dressed in matching pajamas, Marley's idea, they insisted on sleeping in the same room. Abram set up a sleeping bag on the floor of Marley's room, and within minutes, both children had abandoned their separate sleeping arrangements to curl up together like puppies. Marley's my sister, Kira announced, wrapping her small arms around the older girl. You're my sister too, Marley agreed. My baby sister. Big girl, Kira corrected, but without much conviction. She was already drifting off to sleep. Abram and Amira stood in the doorway watching them. They're perfect together, Abram murmured. They are, Amira agreed, and felt the weight of her secret grow heavier. Every compliment Abram paid her about her mothering, every time he mentioned how much Kira had her eyes, except Kira didn't have her eyes at all, every time he talked about their future as if it were already certain, she had to tell him. The fear was paralyzing. What if he looked at her differently? What if he thought she had deceived him? What if this beautiful thing they were building crumbled under the weight of the truth? But she loved him. She loved all of them, Abram with his gentle hands and patient heart, Marley with her fierce protection and generous spirit, and Kira, who she had loved from the moment she drew her first breath. And love, Amira had learned from her sister, required honesty, even when honesty was terrifying, especially then. October arrived with a chill that crept into the mountains like a living thing. The leaves turned spectacular shades of red and gold, and Marley insisted on collecting the prettiest ones to press in books. Kira, not understanding the assignment but eager to help, simply grabbed handfuls of leaves and threw them in the air, laughing as they rained down around her. "It's snowing leaves," she would announce. "Marley, look, snowing." "That's not how snow works," Marley would explain patiently, "but it's very beautiful anyway." They were becoming a unit, a family in all but name, and with each passing day, Amira felt the weight of her deception growing heavier. One evening, as she was putting Kira to bed in her own small apartment, the toddler looked up at her with those enormous eyes, her Aunt Claudia's eyes, and said, "Love Marley, love Daddy Abram." Amira's breath caught. "Daddy Abram?" "Daddy Abram," Kira confirmed, as if it were obvious. "My Daddy Abram." Amira pulled her daughter close, breathing in the scent of her baby shampoo and the lingering sweetness of the bedtime cookies Abram always snuck to both girls, despite Amira's protests. "Kira, baby, there's something Mama needs to tell you when you're bigger, about where you came from, about the woman who loved you first. But right now, you need to know that you are so, so loved. By me, by Marley, by Abram. You are the most loved little girl in the whole world." "Love Mama," Kira mumbled, already half asleep. "Love everybody." "That's right, sweet girl. Love everybody." But lying in her own bed that night, Amira stared at the ceiling and felt the weight of her choices pressing down on her chest. She thought about Claudia, beautiful, brilliant Claudia who had lost her husband to a drunk driver and then lost her own life bringing Kira into the world. She thought about that terrible night in the hospital. The way Claudia had gripped her hand with desperate strength, her face pale and her voice failing. "Promise me," Claudia had whispered. "Promise me she'll know she's loved. Promise me you'll keep her safe." "I promise," Amira had said through her tears. "I promise, Claudia, I swear." And then Claudia was gone, and a nurse was placing a tiny screaming baby in Amira's arms, a baby who had just lost both parents before she even knew they existed. Amira had looked at that baby and made a choice born of love and grief and the desperate need to protect this tiny human from pity and questions and the weight of a tragedy she was too young to understand. She had told everyone Kira was hers. Let them assume. Let them judge. Let them call her irresponsible and reckless and whisper about her poor life choices in grocery store aisles. Better they judged her than pitied Kira. But now there was Abram, with his kind eyes and patient hands and the way he looked at her like she was something precious. Abram who deserved the truth, who deserved to know that the woman he was falling in love with had built her entire life around a lie told for love, but a lie nonetheless. It was a Thursday evening in late October. The air had that crisp bite that promised winter wasn't far behind. Abram had made dinner, his attempt at homemade pizza that was slightly lopsided, but made with enough love to compensate for any aesthetic shortcomings. The girls had eaten until their stomachs were full and their faces were covered in sauce, then had run off to play in Marley's room, their laughter echoing through the house like music. Now they were asleep upstairs, tangled together in Marley's bed, despite Abram's attempts to settle them separately. He had stopped fighting it weeks ago. "They're going to suffocate each other one of these days," he said, coming back to the porch where Amira sat wrapped in a blanket. "Marley's practically lying on top of her."
"It's how they show affection," Amira managed, though her voice sounded distant even to her own ears. Abram settled into the chair beside her, then paused. "Hey, you okay? You've been quiet all evening." This was it, the moment she'd been dreading and preparing for in equal measure. Amira took a breath that felt like swallowing glass. "I need to tell you something," she said. "About Kira." She felt Abram tense beside her. "Is she okay?" "She's fine. She's perfect. It's just," another breath, "I haven't been completely honest with you. About her. About how she came into my life." The words hung between them like smoke. Amira couldn't look at him, couldn't bear to see his expression change from trust to confusion to betrayal. "Okay," said Abram carefully. "I'm listening. Kira isn't—" The words stuck in her throat. She forced them out. "She isn't my biological daughter." Silence, long and heavy and suffocating. "I had an older sister," Amira continued, her voice breaking. "Claudia. She was everything I wanted to be, smart and kind and fearless. She married her college sweetheart, his name was Theo, and they were so happy, the kind of happy that makes you believe in soulmates." She wiped at the tears that had started falling. "Theo was killed in a car accident 3 years ago, drunk driver. Claudia was devastated, but then she found out a few weeks later that she was pregnant. She said it felt like a miracle, like Theo had left her one final gift." Abram reached for her hand. Amira clung to it like a lifeline. "The pregnancy was supposed to be simple. She was healthy. Everything looked normal. But during the delivery, there were complications. She started hemorrhaging, and they couldn't—" Her voice cracked completely. "They couldn't stop it."
"Amira. She died in my arms," Amira sobbed. "She was 31 years old, and she died holding my hand, begging me to take care of her baby. Her last words were, 'Promise me she'll know she's loved.' And then she was gone, and they put Kira in my arms, this tiny, screaming baby who had just lost everything before she even knew what she had." The story poured out of her now, unstoppable. "I looked at her and I knew I would do anything for her. I told everyone she was mine. It was easier than explaining, easier than watching people's faces change from curiosity to pity, easier than reliving the worst day of my life with every new introduction." She turned to face Abram, her face wet with tears. "I've let them judge me. I've let them call me irresponsible and reckless. I've let men on dates call my daughter a mistake. Because as long as they were judging me, they weren't pitying her. As long as they thought I was just some young single mother who got pregnant, they weren't asking questions about dead sisters and tragic births and babies who came into the world through blood and grief. "Amira," Abram said again, but she wasn't done. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. I was scared. I was so scared that if you knew, you would look at me differently. Or worse, that you would look at her differently. That you would see her as something sad or broken or less than what she is." "And what is she?" Abram asked quietly. "Mine." The word came out fierce and absolute. "She's mine, not because I gave birth to her, but because I chose her. I choose her every single day. I'm her mother in every way that matters." Silence fell again, and Amira felt her heart stop. This was the moment he would pull away, make excuses, disappear from her life like all the others. Instead, Abram cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away her tears. "Do you remember what I said the first day we met? About Kira?" Amira shook her head, too overwhelmed to think clearly. "I said she's not a problem, she's a person." His voice was thick with emotion. "That's still true. Whether you gave birth to her or not, you're her mother. You've been her mother every single day for 2 years. You gave up your 20s, your freedom, your peace of mind, all so a little girl you loved would never feel alone." "You're not angry?" "Why would I be angry?" "Because I lied for months." Abram shook his head. "You didn't lie. You protected her. You protected both of you. And when you trusted me enough, you told me the truth." He pressed his forehead against hers. "That's all I could ask for. That's more than I expected." "But—" "I love you," Abram interrupted. "Both of you. And nothing you just told me changes that. If anything, it makes me love you more. Because I see now how strong you are, how fierce, how much you're willing to sacrifice for the people you love." Amira broke down completely, sobbing into his shoulder while he held her. She cried for Claudia, who would never see her daughter grow up. She cried for Kira, who would one day have to learn the truth about where she came from. And she cried with relief, because finally someone saw her, all of her, and he hadn't run away. "Claudia would be proud of you," Abram whispered into her hair. "She'd be grateful that Kira has a mother who loves her this much, and she'd be happy that you finally let yourself be loved too." They sat like that for a long time, wrapped in each other and the October chill and the promise of something new beginning. Inside, 2 little girls slept tangled together like sisters, which was exactly what they had become. Spring arrived in Asheville like a gift. The mountains bloomed with dogwood and rhododendron, and the air smelled like new growth and possibility. Abram and Amira were married on a perfect April afternoon in his backyard, surrounded by family and close friends. They had kept it small and intimate, the kind of wedding that felt like a celebration rather than a performance.
Marley served as flower girl, scattering petals with the enthusiasm of someone being paid by the petal. She wore a pale pink dress and had insisted on wearing her sneakers underneath because princesses should be practical, Daddy. Kira served as ring bearer, though the term was generous. She was more interested in eating the ribbons on the ring pillow than actually delivering said rings. At 3 years old, she had strong opinions about everything, and pretty bows were apparently meant for consumption. "Kira, no," Amira had whispered during the ceremony, gently removing a ribbon from her daughter's mouth. "We don't eat the decorations." "Why not?" Kira asked, genuinely confused. The guests had laughed. Amira had cried happy tears. When it was time for vows, Abram looked at Amira with the kind of love that made everyone present feel like they were intruding on something sacred. "I promise to love you," he said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. "And I promise to love our daughters, all of them, exactly as they are, for every day of my life. I promise to be patient when the mornings are chaos and the nights are long. I promise to see you, really see you, even when you're trying to hide. And I promise that our family, this beautiful, unexpected, perfectly imperfect family, will always be my first priority." Marley whispered loudly to Kira, "That means he loves you forever and ever." "Forever," Kira repeated, solemnly, as if filing away this important information. Amira's vows were shorter, her voice breaking on every other word. You saw me, she managed, looking at Abram through tears. On the hardest day, in the scariest moment, you saw me, and you stayed. You didn't run from my chaos or my secrets or my complicated, messy life. You just stayed. She took a shaky breath. I promise to spend the rest of my life being worthy of that. I promise to love your daughter like my own, because she already feels like my own. And I promise to keep choosing us every single day, even when it's hard.
"Mama pretty," Kira announced loudly, pointing at Amira's dress. "Like princess." More laughter, more tears. That night, after the guests had gone and the girls were finally asleep, Abram and Amira sat on the porch once more. Their porch now, because this was their house, their family, their life. "Do you think Claudia would approve?" Amira asked quietly, a question that still haunted her in vulnerable moments. Abram pulled her closer, pressing a kiss to her temple. "I think she'd be proud of you. I think she'd be grateful that Kira has a mother who loves her this much. And I think she'd be happy that you finally let yourself be loved too." "I wish she could meet you," Amira whispered. "I wish she could see what we built, what Kira has." "I wish I could have known her," agreed Abram. "But in a way I do. She's in Kira's laugh, in her stubborn streak, in the way she loves with her whole heart." He paused. "And she's in you, in the way you love fiercely and protect the people you care about. That's your sister's legacy. Not just Kira, but the way you chose to honor her memory by becoming the mother she couldn't be." They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the night sounds of their neighborhood. Somewhere inside, Marley was probably having one of her epic dreams about being a superhero. Kira was probably sleeping sprawled across the entire bed, taking up far more space than should be physically possible for someone so small. In the morning, Kira would wake first, as she always did. She would crawl into Marley's bed and whisper with all the subtlety of a foghorn, "Wake up, Marley, wake up, it's morning time." Marley would groan dramatically and pull her sister under the covers for a tickle attack that would end with both of them shrieking with laughter. Abram would make his famous pancakes, slightly burnt on the edges but made with enough love to compensate, while Amira refereed the chaos of two small girls arguing over who got the purple cup. "It's my turn for purple," Marley would insist. "My purple," Kira would counter, clutching the cup to her chest with the ferocity of a tiny dragon protecting its hoard. Abram would solve the problem by producing a second purple cup he had bought specifically for this purpose, because he was a father who planned ahead. Later, they would go to the park. Marley would push Kira on the swings, standing on her tiptoes to reach high enough, her face serious with concentration. "Higher, Marley, higher!" Kira would demand, fearless in the way that only 3-year-olds protected by loving big sisters could be. Abram and Amira would watch from a bench, their hands intertwined. "We did okay," Abram would say. "Didn't we?" "Better than okay," Amira would agree. "We did something impossible. We made a family out of broken pieces." In the afternoon, they would stop by the cemetery. It was something Amira did once a month, bringing fresh flowers to Claudia's grave, sitting on the grass beside it, talking to her sister about everything and nothing. "Kira said, 'I love you' without being prompted yesterday, and she's starting preschool in the fall. She's so smart, Claudia. So funny and kind and stubborn, just like you." A pause. "I'm married now, to an incredible man who loves her like his own. Marley is her sister in every way that matters. I kept my promise. She knows she's loved." Sometimes Marley would come with them, placing her own flowers beside Amira's. "Hi, Aunt Claudia," she would say to the stone. "I'm taking very good care of Kira. She's my favorite person ever, except maybe Daddy and Amira, but she's in the top 3 for sure." And once, just once, Kira had asked, "Mama, who's this?" Amira had taken a breath, knowing this conversation would come eventually, but still unprepared for it. "This is your Aunt Claudia. She loved you very much. She wanted to be your mama, but she couldn't, so she asks me to be your mama instead. Where is she? She's in heaven, baby, watching over you." Kira had thought about this with the seriousness of a tiny philosopher. Then she had placed her small hand on the headstone and said, "Thank you, Aunt Claudia, for giving me mama." Amira had cried. Even now, months later, the memory made her eyes sting. But for now, on their wedding night, she simply sat with her husband on their porch and breathed. She had kept her promise to Claudia. She had given Kira a family, not the one they had planned, but the one they needed. She had let herself be loved, even when it was terrifying. And somewhere, Amira hoped, Claudia was smiling. If this story moved you, please like, share, and subscribe. Leave a comment about the families we choose and the love that transcends biology. Have you ever witnessed a love that defied expectations? Share your story. It might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. This is Ever Bell's Stories, where we believe that the most beautiful families are often the ones we build with our hearts rather than our blood. Thank you for being here.